Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. In today's video, I'll be using Paper Rose Studios Christmas Friends collection. I have the 6x8 Quick Cards collection and also the die cut pack. And the die cut pack is just duplicates of the die cuts that are in the Quick Cards collection. The 6x8 Quick Cards collection includes 18 double-sided pattern papers, 3 each of 12 designs. There's 1 sentiment sheet, 3 pop-out die-cut sheets, and also an inspiration sheet. And that's what I'm showing you here. It gives you ideas on how to make 6 simple Christmas cards. I'll show you the die-cut sheets first. These all pop out, so you don't need to do any fussy cutting. They're just attached by some tiny tabs. I like to use my scissors and trim off those little tabs after I punch them out. Lots of adorable images, and there are quite a few sentiments. Holly jolly, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Christmas hugs, and all of the colors match beautifully with the pattern paper. I like how many of the images are on ovals, circles, rounded rectangles, and they have a printed frame, so you don't need to do any layering for those. Here's a look at the pattern paper. What's really fun about the Quick Card collections, they have multiple pattern papers on one sheet. The stripe on the side or the bottom is pre-printed, so it won't add any extra dimension. And since the sheets are 6 by 8 inches in size, you can easily get 2 backgrounds for an A2 size card. If you don't like the design on the one side, you can always flip it over and use the tone-on-tone pattern on the opposite side. And since there are 3 of each sheet, you have plenty of pattern paper to use. I love making multiples of the same card, so I do have a second pack of the die cuts. And these are available for purchase separately. If you're interested in the Christmas Friends collection, I do have links in the description box below. Let's go ahead and get started with card design number 1. Most of my cards are very simple, so if you're looking for some quick and cute Christmas cards, this collection is perfect. I am using some red cardstock for layering. This is Bazzill's Wax Lips color. I think the red matches nicely with the pattern paper. I selected a design with lots of woodland creatures in the background. There's a gingham stripe at the bottom of the panel. Layered it on some red cardstock. Then I'll add 2 of the pop-out die-cut pieces. Sweet little moose holding a present. I'll add the sentiment Merry Christmas underneath. And for a final finishing touch, I'm using a scrap piece of the red cardstock, cutting a small banner, and I'll adhere it in the upper right-hand corner. For most of my cards, I'm not popping up anything with foam or adding bling. I want to have a set of Christmas cards that are nice and flat and don't require additional postage. For my first set of cards, I did make 8. The design isn't exactly the same, but they are very simple cards. Some of the images I put in the center, others are off on the side. Most of the cards I did add a small cardstock banner. The little mouse card I decided to leave off a sentiment. I'll add it on the inside. And you could easily step up all of the designs by adding some bling. Now moving on to card design number 2. The pattern paper has animals in the center and holly on the right and left side. Toward the bottom of the card, I'm adding 2 strips of pattern paper, the green tone-on-tone polka dot and the red tone-on-tone polka dot. I'll first layer those 2 pieces together. Then I'll put adhesive on the back and adhere it on the card. And I did cut those 2 strips just a little bit wider than my card panel, so I flipped over my card and trimmed it off. And I didn't do a great job with my scissors, so I did go off screen and use my trimmer. I'll layer this piece on some red cardstock, put ATG tape on the back, and add my card front onto a card base, leaving 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. All of my cards in this video are American Standard A2 size, 4 1/4 inches by 5 1/2 inches. Next, I'll add a stitch circle die cut, and I did cut this out of vellum. I'll cut off the very right side of the circle, and I just held it up to my card, flipped it over, used my scissors. That way I have a nice straight cut on the right side. I'll be adding a sweet little moose image. I'll glue down the moose first. Before adhering the circle, I am adding some scrap cardstock pieces behind the moose, just behind his antlers and head where it goes off of the two stripes. Otherwise, the top portion of the circle will sort of dip down. So this will help keep it nice and level. I'll add the sentiment Merry Christmas, and I do have a scrap piece of cardstock on the left side of the sentiment. For a final finishing touch, I'm using a scrap piece of the red cardstock, cutting a small banner, and I'll adhere it in the upper left-hand corner. So there is my finished card, and I did make two using this design. The moose is absolutely adorable. I love the Christmas lights on its antlers. For card design number 3, I have two pieces of pattern paper. The background piece, I'm using a tone-on-tone green polka dot paper. And the other panel has lots of the woodland creatures with the red gingham at the bottom. I'll first layer the smaller pattern paper piece on some very similar green cardstock. Not sure of the brand or the name, it's just something I have in my stash. Then I'll add that panel on the polka dot piece, put ATG tape on the back, and add my card front onto a card base. Next, I'll add this sweet little bunny holding a giant candy cane. There's little birds sitting on top of the candy cane. I'll add the sentiment sparkle on the right side. And I did put a piece of scrap cardstock behind the sentiment on the right. To finish off the card, I'll add another banner. And I'm doing that quite a bit on my cards. Just adds that little extra detail. I always end up with lots of narrow strips of the pattern paper, so I will add them on the inside of the card for a little extra decoration. So there is my finished card, and this is card design number 3. For card design number 4, I am using a card sketch for inspiration. This is from OWH. It's sketch number 161. When looking for a card sketch to use with this collection, I was looking for designs that have either a narrow strip at the bottom or in the center of the card. So I thought this sketch would be perfect. The pattern paper has lots of the animal critters on the background, the red gingham at the bottom, layered it on more of the red cardstock. The image has a rainbow stripe frame around it, and it really gets lost on the busy background. So I did decide to layer it on the same red cardstock. Since the corners are already rounded, I decided to also round the cardstock corners using a corner chomper. For a sentiment, I'll add jingle bells, and I did put some scrap cardstock pieces behind the sentiment on the right side. For a final finishing touch, I'll add two small circle die cuts, use the same red cardstock, and I'll just adhere them in the upper right-hand corner. So there is my finished card, and this is card design number 4. The deer image is super sweet. It's all tangled up in Christmas lights and wearing a Santa hat. For card design number 5, the card sketch is from OWH. It's number 218. This is one of my favorite card sketches, but I will be using it a little differently today. The pattern paper has a polka dot stripe toward the bottom of the panel, which matches perfectly with the card sketch. For the large image box, I'm using one of the tone-on-tone pattern papers, sort of a green watercolor design. I'll layer both of the pieces on some green cardstock. And this is cardstock from my stash. I'm not sure of the brand or name. Using more of the green cardstock, I'll cut a little hillside and adhere it at the bottom of the green watercolor pattern paper. Now I'll put glue on the back and add my image panel following the design of the card sketch. Now I'll bring in two of the cute animal die cut pieces. I have the deer and also the bunny with the giant candy cane. Before adhering them down, I am adding the scrap cardstock pieces behind them, just in the area where it goes off of the cardstock hill. They don't have to be the perfect size to fit behind, just enough so those images stay nice and level. I have both of the die cut pieces flipped upside down. That way I can tell where I need to add the scrap cardstock pieces. Then I'll put glue on the back and adhere them on the green hill. For a sentiment, I'm adding Happy Holidays, and I already have scrap cardstock on the left side, and I'll adhere the sentiment in the upper left-hand corner. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. Now moving on to card design number 6. This pattern paper is one of my favorites. There's tree, holly, mistletoe, and a sweet image of a bunny mouse sitting in a mug. I'll layer this piece on red cardstock, put ATG tape on the back, and add my card front onto a card base. For some of the cards, I'm adding 1/8 of an inch for the cardstock layer, and others I'm adding 1/4 of an inch. This card, the cardstock layer, is an additional 1/4 of an inch. For an image, I have the circle die cut piece. It has a red mug with the same bunny and mouse inside. To add just a tiny bit of dimension, I cut out a slightly smaller circle die cut, and I'll adhere the 2 pieces together. That way it's still nice and flat, but it does give the card just that little bit of dimension. I'll add the sentiment Merry Christmas in the lower right hand corner and cut a small banner to adhere in the upper right hand corner. For card design number 7, the card sketch is from Sweet Sunday. This is number 179. I have 2 different pattern papers, and these are actually the front and back of the same paper. Sweet little images on top and the blue watercolor paper at the bottom. I'll layer both of them on some red cardstock. To cover up that little bit of a gap between the 2 pattern papers, I'm adding a strip of red cardstock. On the card sketch, there's a narrow strip, and you could put ribbon. I'm adding a narrow strip of blue cardstock, about 1/8 of an inch. I'll adhere it in place using glue. Now I'll put ATG tape on the back and add my card front onto a card base. Next, I'll add a stitch circle die cut, and I did cut this out from white shimmer cardstock. I'll adhere it on the top portion of the card, and that's where I'll add another die cut image. The sweet little mouse wearing a Santa hat and holding a giant present. I do have a piece of foam at the very tip of its tail since it goes off of the circle die cut. Now I'll start working on the 3 small banners that are in the lower left-hand corner. Using red cardstock, some of the white shimmer cardstock, and a gray polka dot tone-on-tone pattern paper. We'll cut a fishtail on the bottom. First, adhere the red cardstock banner. Then I'll add a scrap piece of cardstock, put it on the left side of the red banner. Put glue on the back of the gray polka dot banner and adhere it on the left side of the red banner. And I'll do the same thing for the small white banner. First, add a small scrap piece of pattern paper, put it on the right side of the gray polka dot banner, and adhere that final small white banner in place. The card sketch does indicate to add a bow on the left side, so if you were using twine or ribbon, you could tie a small bow. Since I'm using paper, I'll also add a paper die cut bow. I use Paper Rose Studios Tiny Bows die set. I love this set and use it all the time. There is a little center piece on the bow. I use the same blue cardstock color, glue them together, and I'll adhere it on the left side of the card. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. For card design number 8, the background panel has a blue gingham strip in the very center. I'll layer this piece on red cardstock. The cardstock layer is an additional 1/8 of an inch. Almost all of my background pieces are 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. I'll add my card front onto a card base. I cut out a stitched banner die cut from Vellum, and I will be adhering that in the center of the card. First, I'll attach the circle die cut piece, and this one has the same sweet image with the bunny and mouse sitting in a mug. After adhering the die cut piece, I'll flip over the banner, put glue on the back just behind the die cut piece. That way the glue doesn't show through on the vellum. Now I'll add the sentiment Christmas hugs underneath the image on the right side. For a final finishing touch, I'll add a small bow die cut. And this is from the same Tiny Bows die set. I'll adhere it at the top of the circle die cut piece. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. Now moving on to card design number 9, and this is my final card design. The background pattern paper has lots of critters, geese and deer. At the bottom of that panel, there's a rainbow polka dot stripe. I'll layer the background piece on some red cardstock, and on the left side of the card, I'm adding some of the green watercolor pattern paper, also layering it on some red cardstock. I'll put ATG tape on the back and add my card front onto a card base. I'll add the goose die cut image. This is another animal that's all tangled up in Christmas lights. Next, I'll add the sentiment twinkle. And for this card, I did put some thin foam dimension behind the sentiment on the right side and scrap cardstock on the very left side. So this is probably the thickest card I have out of all of them. For final finishing touch, I'll add another die cut piece, a little red bow. I'll put it in the upper left-hand corner. Now here's another look at the 24 cards I made using Paper Rose Studios Christmas Friends Quick Cards collection. This is an adorable collection and perfect if you need to make some quick last-minute Christmas cards. If you are interested in any of the products I used in this video, I do have links provided in the description box below. Paper Rose Studio is located in Australia, and they do ship their products internationally, but you can also purchase them here in the US, and I do have links in the description box for both locations. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.